Hey guys, this is Karen, and I wanted to walk you through one of my paint videos. I'm going to be using a lot of blues and purples, and I'm going to walk you through step by step. And remember, try and think outside the box, otherwise all our art looks the same. And also, true art really doesn't follow the rules. You learn your rules and your basics, but then you push outside those boundaries. This segment of my video is going to be a little sped up so it doesn't take so long, but I always wet the back of my stretched canvas about a medium amount with fresh water, and then I massage it in to the cotton back. What happens is it'll help tighten up the canvas because as the water dries after getting absorbed, it'll shrink the cotton just a little bit, enough where it will tighten the canvas but not overly tight. And you definitely want a tight canvas, especially when you're using pour paints, because they can tend to get heavy in the middle and you don't want your canvases to sag, especially while they're drying. So marking my spot for the camera, and now I'm just waving it around to try and speed up some of the drying. But you don't have to wait for the back of the canvas to finish drying to start painting. Here's my massive collection of little push pins covered with dry paint. And if you look at the back of your canvas where the wood slats are, where they're mitered and intersect, there's a diagonal line there between the two pieces of wood. That's where I want to put my push pin. Now remember, you want your push pins all the same height. So if you can go all the way deep with one push pin or two, but the others aren't going all the way, you want to adjust them so that they are. So that's why I banged on that one push pin so that I could have it the same height as the others. Creative Inspirations is the brand of acrylic paints that I dominantly use. They're extremely saturated with color, they're very economical, and there's my Floetrol. Gotta have my Floetrol. My ratio is paint 1:1 with Floetrol, and I will add a little bit of water to adjust consistency. Again, all the paints are by Creative Inspirations. Now that Creative Inspiration bottle was actually about half used of paint, so that's why I used the bottle and just added Floetrol to it. You know, try not to waste your plastics, recycle as much as possible. I'm just layering colors. You don't always have to put everything in a cup or a measuring cup of some sort or a container, or just a lot of times you can just lay down your colors. Like I said, I pre-mix all mine in large batches, pretty much all my colors, so on a whim I can just use whatever I want. Remember to shake them up really good too, because if they're sitting around, the Floetrol can separate from the paint. And I was saying about that Creative Inspiration paint, it's very creamy, so it's not too thick and it's not real thin, and I just love it because I can use it straight for my traditional acrylic painting, or just do a 50-50, 1:1 ratio with the Floetrol. And again, you want to modify your paint consistencies based on the technique you're doing. This is a straight 1:1 ratio Floetrol of paint, but if I was doing, say, a swipe, I would want, and using a white over top of my colors to do a swipe, I definitely want my white to be a little bit thinner, noticeably thinner, but not excessively watered down, and I would use water to dilute it. Same with whatever your top color is going to be on a swipe. Not that I'm doing one, but I'm using that as an example. I try different products to get different type of cell effects. That's the coconut milk serum. I also love the 3-in-1 oil is actually my favorite, the silicone, 3-in-1 silicone. I have another hair product. So, and sometimes I'll mix them, I'll use both in my painting because the 3-in-1 is much thinner, so I like to use that more. That was just straight water from a bottle, spray bottle. I, again, experiment. You spray it on, you get this nice kind of soft effect. You almost gives it that cloud pour kind of look with your whites. That is just a kitchen utility. I'm telling you, go to the kitchen aisle at your Walmart or at your grocery store and pick up gadgets and just play with them. And that's like a chopper. You can chop vegetables with it and then scoop with it. And it's I use that a lot for some of my paint techniques. It's small, it's easy to handle. You can angle it on the short edge or the long edge. So here I just was messing around, just making, and the circle doesn't have to be in the center, it can be off center. Again, no rules. I mean, yes, you do have basic rules in art for balance and whatnot, but don't stick with them. Break outside of them. Make an unbalanced painting. Use colors that clash, throw away the color wheel. I got my art associate's degree from the Art Institute of Philadelphia back in 1985, and I did graphic design as a professional for about 16 years through the 80s and early 90s, mid 90s actually. So I know all the formal aspects of a lot of formal aspects of art in not just in graphic design but fine art, and it gets boring when you stick to all the rules. I love using colors that clash, and also colors that, you know, follow the color wheel, but you got to experiment and go outside your comfort zone and don't look at the color wheel. Just randomly pick colors from your box. Sometimes you will be surprised what you get without planning. You just never know. And I like to use a heat gun as opposed to a torch, only because I like not having to buy replacement butane. I don't like wasting my money like that, so I love my electric heat gun. It saves me money as far as I'm concerned, and you won't get any odor or have anything explosive. I just dip my hands or pour my paint right into my hands. I'll use water to dilute it and flick it, and you can get speckles or streaks. Again, get dirty. Now, I notice I'm not wearing gloves, but I should have showed you the product I use in my hands at the beginning of the video. But it's a liquid glove product. Basically, it's a lotion, and you just you don't need a lot. Put it on your hands. You know, at least maybe 5 minutes before you get ready to paint. Let it dry. Massage it well into your cuticles and the sides of your fingernails and under your fingernails. And you're still going to get paint in your hands, but it will come off amazingly easier, much easier. Mechanics use that stuff too to help cut grease getting into their skin. So again, my hands are protected. I'm a big advocate of, even with these water-based paints, you don't want, you know, these chemicals getting absorbed by your body. So I always use my latex gloves for my varnishing, because that varnish, when it sticks to your skin, it's really hard to get off, and it's very hard to get off. But most of the time I use my liquid glove lotion when I'm not using my varnish. And again, my heat gun. Oh yeah, another great tip is turn your canvas. Don't just leave it in the one position the whole time, and you don't have to get up and move around. Unless you're working on a really, really big canvas, then yeah, you should get up and move around. But I frequently like to turn my canvas, because you'll view your image in a completely different way when you turn it. Turn it as often as you want in any direction, because the composition obviously shifts when you move your canvas around from your point of view. Also, something I notice in a lot of videos that people make on pouring, when they tilt, everybody seems to want to, I'm going with the water on my edges again, because I wanted to get some diffuse soft paint. You can see it almost has a watercolor look to it when you add and I'm only doing it on those edges, not the whole painting, because that's what I wanted, the effect that I wanted with that paint. But anyhow, when you're tilting, think of your composition. A lot of people want to go for the goal of covering all four corners, which is great. If that's the look you want, all four corners completely covered, your paint down the sides, that looks great. But you don't always have to go that route. You know, you use your negative space, regardless of whatever your background color is, white, black, or a color. Utilize that. Maybe you tilt so your paint's like in this example, my paint's down at the bottom all the way at the edge, but the tops and sides you've got white. Sorry about the back of my head. I got to blowing with my straw, and then I was like, oh crap, I got people watching. and I'm blocking their view, so my big old head's going to move here in a second. And again, combine techniques. You know, the blowing with the straw is like mimicking a Dutch pour in essence, but it doesn't have to be white on top. It's colors laying on top of colors. So your whole painting doesn't have to be a Dutch pour. Your whole painting doesn't have to be blowing with the straw. You can just do segments of it and combine your techniques. Again, true art does not follow the rules, and what I mean by that is really express yourself, use your emotions when you paint, and say screw the rules. And if you don't like it, paint over it when it's wet, when it's dry, whatever. Oh, my cat's visiting me. He was just meowing at me. I don't know if you heard him meowing in the background. Again, I turn my canvas again, and but anyhow, as far as your composition goes, if you're stretching and tilting, and you're like, I really like this, but all my corners aren't done, or I got this big, negative space here, then stop and fill in that negative space with more of your background color, or complementary color or whatever. But don't feel, I've seen some beautiful paintings, and I'm like, oh, stop, and they're just so determined to get all four sides done and corners that some of their beautiful cells and colors are getting completely spilt off the canvas because they're so focused on getting all those four corners covered. And I'll sit there and watch some really gorgeous moments that they're gone, they spill over the side, and that's it, they're history. And I think it's because the artists are so involved in looking at the four corners that they are missing out on, maybe I'll leave the negative space or don't. Just stop stretching and tilting and grab some of your colors and fill in and manipulate those edges or corners or whatever to save your composition and some beautiful moments you have in your paints, reactions. Look at the whole picture when you're tilting, not just trying to flood your corners. So that's just a tip that I encourage people to do. And here I'm using a palette knife. Palette knives come in a lot of different sizes and shapes. This is my favorite palette knife. It's just the way it feels, the handle and the shape of the metal and the thinness of the metal. To me, it just always feels like I'm very comfortable with it. So that's my favorite palette knife. And again, combine techniques. Oh, and I'm always moving my heat gun a lot. Quickly agitating it because you don't want to scorch your paint. You can burn it too, but even just scorching it, what happens is the top gets real crusty, and yet underneath it, it's super wet. And when you try and move your paint, the undercoat's going to move, but the top kind of lags behind, and it's all kind of wrinkled and crusty looking because it's become, a hard plastic. Again, getting my hands dirty and put the paint on. And then it's the pre-mixed paint with the Floetrol. And then a lot of it still sticks to your hand, so I just spray some water on it. Try not to waste the paint and get more off. Same with the red. The red was a little thicker, so I immediately added some water to it. And yeah, you can use paint brushes and dip them in your paint or dribble the paint on them, and you'll get bigger flecks of paint. Or you can put just a little on and dilute it, and you'll get little sprinkles. So I like to use my hands, as you can see. And here for composition, I'm trying to just get the speckles on that one corner and then into the middle, and then extend a little bit to the opposite corner versus the whole painting. You absolutely have speckled whole paintings. But I was kind of trying to concentrate these textures that I'm creating with the speckles in the corner and have them denser in the bottom left corner and then softer as they go away from the corner. As you can see, they're more concentrated in that corner that's closest to me now, and then they soften and there's less of the speckles. So again, I'm thinking composition, and and then I used some heavier paint. I didn't dilute it as much and because I wanted some bigger segments. And I think at one point I start using my brush. I can't remember if I did in this one or not. But you know, when you look at your paintings as they're evolving, sometimes, you know, you do your tilt and you're like, oh, I love this, this is great. You know, that's awesome. If you're happy with it and it was what you were hoping for, or even better, you know, quit while you're ahead and don't over tilt it and get rid of and end up wishing you hadn't. But if there are times you're looking at your painting going, yeah, I like this, this is nice, but I want to kind of try something different, just grab some paint. And here I'm using the palette knife because I wanted some denser paint, because what was coming off my hand was a lot of speckles and streaks, which is what I wanted. But I wanted bigger sections of paint to splatter. So I used the palette knife, or I could have used a paintbrush, and just flick it. And wherever it lands, because, you know, when you're working like that, a lot of times you can't really control where it's going to go, because I really wanted it more towards the center, not dead center, but you know, it ended up over there, and I'm happy with it. So try not to overthink when you're painting, and you might have a vision in your mind, but be open to your vision changing as it develops and it morphs into something that you weren't planning. Because that's what I think so awesome about working with fluid paints, is they have a mind of their own. And the more we try to control them, I think the more rigid your work can be, or very, very limited. Because it's happy mistakes. It's experimental painting that, you know, it does what it does. So let it do what it does. Let your paint breathe. Let your paint be free to do what it does. And you will end up with some results at times that you probably may not ever be able to reproduce, or maybe you can, but you're going to just love what the paint gave you. So try not to get locked into a vision. Just have kind of a vague idea where you want to go with it. And that way you're not going to be disappointed or start restricting yourself too much. Actually, when I paint, I have no idea. A lot of times I don't even know what colors I want to use. I put them all out. I have them in organized in these totes, and like I said, I pre-mix the squeeze bottles, so they're ready to go. And I just have them all out, and I just go with the flow. I'm like, well, this color would go nice with that. Yeah, but I don't want it to go nice. I want it to look awkward. So then I'll pick a different color that I normally wouldn't. And sometimes it looks like crap, and sometimes I'm like, oh, I'm so glad I tried that. So definitely, that's just my way of painting. It's referred to sometimes as intuitive painting. And, you know, you have to let your guard down when you do that. And, you know what, if you don't like it, either scrape it off or let it dry and paint over it. Or what I do is I just keep on layering and going with it. And sometimes I'll just come back to it the next day and not paint over the whole painting. But I'm like, you know, I actually like some elements of this painting, but I'm going to do maybe a small ring pour over in this quadrant of the painting. And they go great together. Or one in the middle, or maybe I'm going to do a flip cup, a little mini flip cup or couple, but still keep my original painting more as a background. So don't be afraid to experiment in that aspect, because I've had some paintings where they were just okay, and I knew I could do better. I wasn't like, would I hang that up on my wall? Let's ask myself, would I want it? And the answer is no. It's just okay. Sometimes I'll just leave it alone, let it dry for a couple days, come back to it, and then I'll just grab some more paint and add to it, and then it takes on a whole dimension versus painting completely over it and trying to cover it. So experiment with that too. Do multiple pours, but wet pours over dry pours, not just wet over wet over wet. Or, you know, I'll mix traditional painting, which what I mean by that is non-fluid painting. acrylics that I'm not thinning down and diluting into a fluid element, such as with the Floetrol. So sometimes I will come back to a painting that's dry, that was a pour, it was all fluid paint, and then I'll go back with traditional painting techniques and add elements to it. And I love that combination of traditional paints with the fluid paints, because they're so different textural wise and result wise. So it is, to me, they have a very interesting aesthetic, and again, that's thinking outside the box and not getting stuck into any kind of limitation. So when I stretch and tilt, like I said, just have fun with it, I'm notorious for sometimes doing too much and wishing I hadn't, but when I get in that direction, then I start adding more paint and adding more layers, and knowing I'm not going to be able to undo some of what I did, but I can always just say, well, hey, and then I'm just going to keep going with this, like I'm doing in this painting. I'm just going to add more layers to it and have fun with it, and try and make sure you're not completely covering, some of the work that you did. Let them all kind of cohesively work together, or not cohesively, but I think I was getting more towards where I wanted to be. And you can never have enough white paint or black. I get, like a lot of people do, I just go to the paint department at Walmart or a hardware store and get a gallon of the brightest white latex paint I can find. And then when I come home, I actually transfer about half a gallon into an old empty Floetrol gallon container that I had, because it has a handle on it and it's plastic versus a paint can, and I'll transfer about half the paint into that container so it's an easy pour. And then I'll pre-mix my white with Floetrol in a quart, it's about a quart container, which is what you see me using when I use the white. And I actually need to get some black in a gallon size too. I wasn't using it as much, but I started doing some more black background paintings, can't speak much. And I was like, okay, these are pretty cool. I do tend to lean towards very bold colors. Not really into pastels as much, but I definitely, in this one, you can see the purples and blues have kind of softened a lot into pastels, and that's why I added the harsh black and white contrast on it. I wanted some sort of central focus of subject matter in the painting, so I went back to the it was getting too monochromatic for me, even with the red. I love how black and white work together. The way they're, something about the texture of black and white painting, and I don't just mean that they're such high contrast colors. I mean the way, there's something about the properties of white and black paint. I do again 50-50 Floetrol. Something about the way they work together, and the textures you get, and the cells, and the way that they interact, to me, is no other colors do that. Now, actually, some of the real dark purples or blues with the white, I think you get that same kind of reaction. And some of the really hot, bright, vibrant colors with the black. But I always love the textures that develop with black and white together, and also when they're complementing other colors. Now, this little goofy toy I'm using was from the kids section, probably at the dollar store. It's just a little soft plastic toy filled with water or gel. I'm not sure if it's a gel or water, but it's $1, and it bends in half and it wrinkles up and you can squeeze it, and it's just a little floaty play toy thing, and I thought it simulates a water balloon, so it might be a good tool for dipping. You know, those balloon dips you do. I was just looking for something other than the balloon. Yeah, I have balloons, and I've used them before, but I thought, well, this thing, I don't have to keep blowing it up. It stays. It is as it is. But I'm not sure if that's water in there or gel or water and gel. And I've noticed when you want to do these kind of dips, these floral dips, spiral dips, whatever you want to call them, and other artists have mentioned this too, you don't want your paint when it's real fresh and at its thinnest. In other words, after you just poured, let your paint set so it has a little more, it starts to, I don't want to say, well, it's in a drying phase, so it thickens up as it dries. So it's nowhere near dry, but it's thicker than it was from when I first put it on, noticeably. And it'll hold your shapes much better than if your paint's too, either too thin or still very, hasn't even begun to coagulate somewhat. So, yeah, the dips are fun. I usually don't do them that often. Actually, it's pretty rare that I do them, but I thought this painting would be a fun place to do it. And yeah, definitely roll around, rock around, you know, have fun with whatever object you're using to paint with. And sometimes I wipe it off right away, or sometimes I'll leave the paint on because I want colors, like maybe I want that purple up in where the white is, so I'll leave it on, and vice versa. Vice versa. And yeah, definitely want to lift slow. Now this video is 4 times faster than normal. The first segment where I was wetting my canvas, just that and putting the push pins in, was 2 times normal speed. But since we got into the whole painting part, from that part has been 4 times normal speed. Otherwise this video would have been way too long. But yeah, when you lift whatever object you're using to do your dipping with, whether it's another canvas or a balloon or a little water toy I have, lift it slowly so the paint slowly stretches back down, and you'll be more pleased with your results, at least in my experience. And again, I'm just hitting it again with the old heat gun just because I created new textures, so therefore I want to, you know, add a little bit of heat to it, because definitely get some cells that pop up. Okay, close-up time. So yeah, I think it's pretty cool when the artists take their camera off of the holder and zoom in, and you get to see the details, and you're like, oh, I didn't even know that was all there, from when we're watching and viewing from our perspective. And then when the artist takes the camera and does the close-ups, it's like, oh, I didn't even realize that was all there. You know, I do, because of where I'm sitting working on the painting, and I have my glasses on, wear reading glasses. But from the viewer's point of view, on these more small, very detailed paintings, yeah, it's like, oh, I didn't realize all that was in there. Well, listen, please like and subscribe. I'd really appreciate it. When you subscribe to me, I subscribe to you. I do that every time, and I wish more artists were more supportive and would do the same. Instagram, KCS Fine Art, KCS.fineart, and my website is kcsfineart.com. All my paintings are for sale. I actually have to list a lot more on there. I have a small collection on there, and thank you so much for watching. And it's Karen C. Smith Fine Art on Facebook. And shout out to Dirty Artists and Acrylic Joe. Check out their pages on YouTube.